I've been licensed in Florida for about 10 years, and I've been a real estate broker for most of that time. Prior to that, I also was a real estate professional in Houston, Texas. And the last 4 years, I've primarily been working on short sales and helping families out of distressed situations. And thankfully, we've been successful doing that and helping people, good people, out of bad situations. The name of my company is Rescue Florida Realty, and we're a small local shop, and we work hard to do the very best for our people, even if that means that it's not necessarily the best thing for us as a realtor. If I'm going to make less money on a deal, but it's the right thing to do for you or whomever to get away from a distressed situation, it's something that certainly we will do. Prior to that, I have worked successfully in marketing and in sales in various walks of life, shall I say, in industries, and I'm pretty comfortable dealing with all sorts of situations, and I think that's one of the things that makes our company successful, is that we have good people working to negotiate out these situations, which again can be extremely stressful. And what I'd like to do at this point is introduce Phil Resnick from the law firm of Chapman & Plymouth.
As Jeff said, I'm an attorney with the law offices of Chapman & Plymouth Law. I've been practicing in the area of foreclosure defense and bankruptcy law in Martin and St. Lucie County primarily for the last 4 years. I have completed over 300 short sale transactions in the last 4 years of doing the practice. One thing that separates our firm from many other firms out there, we do provide free consultations to anyone that wants to come in to speak with us about their situation, whether it's a distressed property situation where they're looking to possibly do a short sale, or if it's a situation where they're trying to keep the home to do a loan modification. We do provide free consultations. In addition, we also provide bankruptcy services as well. Each client has a different situation, and the key is really figuring out what's the best for that client's interests. I'm a member of the Martin County Bar Association, the St. Lucie County Bar Association as well, and also practicing in other areas of civil litigation with Chapman & Plymouth Law. Prior to joining Chapman & Plymouth, I was also a minority shareholder with the law firm of Scott Resnick, PA, where I also practiced primarily in foreclosure defense. I've handled everything from loan modifications, mediations, short sales, deed in lieu, and litigation aspects in my practice area. And again, I'm Philip Resnick with the law offices of Chapman & Plymouth Law. We are committed to the justice that you deserve. I'm going to now hand it over to James Kanata, and he's going to give us a little background on himself.
I'm James Kanata. I'm with Mortgage Plus Financial Group over in Stuart, Florida. Like Phil, I am a small local shop. I want to tell everybody a little bit different, because I get this question a lot, between what a mortgage broker is and actually a bank. Mortgage broker actually represents their clients to a multitude of banks. I know there was a famous little line that basically a lead generation company put out there, said, when banks compete, you win. Basically, that's what we like to do. We don't you don't come into me and say, well, what's your interest rate? We don't have one. What we do have is the ability to take a client, break them down into their specific financial profile, and then shop them around to banks all around the country to get them the best deal that suits them, suits their specific situation. Now, the reason why we do so well in such a hard time is because of our backgrounds. My personal background, I've started as a financial advisor for Morgan Stanley up in New Jersey. I then moved over to NASDAQ, where I was an institutional trader for Spear Leeds and Kellogg, which is a division of Goldman Sachs. I was the guy on the TV where if if mom and pop wanted to buy 1,000 shares of Cisco Systems, they'd go to their computer, buy 1,000 shares, and instantly, miraculously, they'll have bought 1,000 shares. But what we did was we were the back scenes. We would actually then find a seller for that 1,000 shares they're looking to buy and sell it. From there, I moved down to Charles Schwab on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I was there for a number of years. And then things started changing in the world of finance. And as it started to change, so did I saw the writing on the wall down there. It's kind of like a ghost town, the museum almost, down on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I see on TV I'll do news flashes on CNN and MSNBC, and I see a lot of the fellows I used to work with, and man, they're just standing around doing nothing. But what I did is I took a buyout from Charles Schwab, and I came down to Florida, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And my brother-in-law was running a Wells Fargo branch from Vero Beach all the way down to Boca, and he said, "Why don't you come in and give it a shot here at Wells?" And I was back in 2004, right after the back-to-back hurricanes, and wow, I got in there, and I'll never forget the first couple people I ever got on the phone. They would give you a bunch of leads over at Wells. Got this guy on the phone. He's asking me about DTIs and whatnot. And I had no clue. I had actually on the phone Google what a DTI was. That said, I realized I was really behind the 8 ball. So what I started doing was becoming a guideline junkie, studying guidelines at Wells Fargo. And as I would listen to people around the office, the other loan officers, their deals would get shot down when they would send them to underwriting. I turned around and I said, well, no, that guideline's wrong. Your underwriter's incorrect. And I would take their file and I'd restructure it. With that kind of mindset, I ended up being, by the end of 2005, the #1 producer for Wells Fargo in our unit. And then by the end of 2006, I was actually #4 in the United States of America for them. Because what I would do is I take the proverbial square peg, shave it, and put it in the round hole. If you would come to me with your 800 credit score and you want to put 30-40% down, I'm really not your guy. We can handle that at Mortgage Plus, but we're looking to help people who can't get loans anywhere else. And it's been, from there I went on to Chase. I was a sales manager, and I just got into a situation where I felt I needed to be able to offer clients a multitude of options. So that's why we opened up the mortgage shop, Mortgage Plus Financial Group over in Stewart. And like I said, now people come to us, whether they're looking to buy that luxury home on the water and they're a classic credit score and a classic down payment, or if they're looking saying, hey, look, I need to refinance a house that's upside down. We have avenues and options, and because of our backgrounds, we can shave the proverbial square pegs and fit them in those round holes.
Okay, now James, let me ask you a question. You just mentioned something that I think is very important to a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there, obviously, who bought at the height of the market or refinanced at the height of the market, and they are upside down right now. Perhaps they still have the ability and they are current, let's say, on their mortgage, or maybe they are a little bit behind on their mortgage, but they might have the ability to stay in that house before it really gets into trouble. I know that you have some information and some knowledge on some of the various government programs out there to help people in those types of situations.
Right. Well, there's a lot of programs that have been out there, but to be quite honest, they weren't very attractive. Well, the president and the lawmakers, they actually sat down and they realized this. There was a flaw in the system. And what they ended up doing was creating the HARP program. And the HARP program, let's call it 1.0, was the original version, wasn't very successful. Now it's HARP 2.0. And basically now what you could do is, if you're upside down in a house, up to 125%, meaning I owe $100,000, I owe $125,000 on the house, but it's only worth $100,000, that's a 125% loan to value, would be called. You can go not just to the bank who holds your current mortgage, but you can now go to any bank that will actually facilitate this. And there's a number of them that are starting to pop up, and you can refinance that mortgage down very well. You still have to credit qualify. There still may be an appraisal needed because they have to make sure you're within that 125% loan to value parameter. But on March 1st is HAMP 3.0, where it's now going to be an unlimited amount of being upside down. So if you owe $300,000 on your house and it's a $100,000 value, as long as you can credit qualify for that loan, there are banks that will be able to facilitate you in getting your home refinanced.
So do those people have to be current in their mortgage, or can they be behind in their mortgage?
Well, you're going to have to be current. They're going to allow you to be 2 times 30. And what that means is in the last 12 months, you're allowed to have 2 lates, which is a lot. And a late in the mortgage world is not a late in the way a lot of people figure. If your mortgage is due, say, January 1st, and you pay it on January 16th, well, you're going to pay the 5% extra in payment, and that's why that payment's a little bit higher. Yeah, you're paying a late fee, But in the mortgage world, that is not considered a mortgage late. A mortgage late is if your payment is due January 1st and a full 30-day period goes past, and then you make that payment, say on February 2nd, now you're going to get hit with a 30-day late.
Okay. So basically, if anyone is missed more than 2 payments, they probably would not qualify for that program.
Correct. That would not
Okay.
qualify. Now, that's the HARP federal guideline. There are banks, just because that's what the guideline says, banks have the right to put what's called overlays on top of them. And basically what is their restriction. They have the right to say, well, this is what the federal guideline says, but we're not comfortable to offer that. We want a 0 times 30 or a 1 times 30.
Okay. So in that case, if people are out there and they're wondering about this, first of all, certainly we welcome your calls and questions or comments at 340-1590. That's 340-1590. And when we come back, we're going to discuss what happens when you're more than a couple of payments behind and what you really need to be looking out for.
You're listening to The Real Estate Pros here on WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Back to your host, Jeff Rubin.
Thank you, Veronica. And when we just left, we were talking about people that may just have a couple payments behind and the opportunity of some of the federal programs out there, if they're underwater especially, to refinance at a better rate and at today's values, basically, and as a way of basically getting them some relief. But what happens if one is more than 60 days behind? And I know there's a lot of people out there that are in that situation or might be getting into that situation. And Phil Resnick from Chapman and Plymouth, you do a lot of foreclosure defense and as well as other work that has to do with these distressed situations. What can someone expect when they're, let's say, 60 days late?
Well, the typical process in any kind of situation where you've fallen behind on your mortgage, most likely you're going to start receiving a good amount of phone calls from whoever the lender is. Those phone calls, I'd recommend you take the phone calls. Even if you are in a distressed situation, there are possibilities of getting forbearances with the bank, trying to work things out, because as this recession has continued to grow in this area and throughout the country, more and more banks are realizing that people do need help. On the other hand, sometimes there's nothing that the bank's willing to do, and in that case it may be best for you to come to our office and have a free consultation to talk about what your legal rights are. The typical process in a foreclosure is most of the time after 90 days of delinquency, the attorneys for the bank will go forward with a foreclosure process where they will send out a process server to your home location, and they will serve you in person with the foreclosure complaint. Under Florida law, you will then have 20 days to respond to that foreclosure complaint. I cannot stress enough, it's imperative that you do not ignore that notice. There's numerous people out there that think there's nothing that can be done, and they put their head in the sand. And that's really the worst thing that you can do, because if you don't respond to the lawsuit, you are essentially waiving the right to bring up any kind of defenses that may be available to you. And obviously, if you're not reaching out to proactively work on your situation, then you're not going to have help available to you that is out there. A unique aspect of our office is that we also, within our consultations, we will consult regarding potential bankruptcy. We do Chapter 7 bankruptcies as well as Chapter 13 bankruptcies. Some individuals out there think that to qualify for a bankruptcy, you have to be in a situation where you have little or no income. That's not necessarily true. Depending on the person's situation, especially with a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, those are more designed for people that are making an income of, say, around $100,000, but then they do have a large amount of debt. But what's unique in a 13 is it is possible to do such things as cram down a second mortgage if there's a second mortgage on the property. That can really be a big break to a homeowner if we're able to get rid of the second mortgage payment. Perhaps then the first mortgage isn't as much of an issue. But the most important aspect, again, is if you are served with a lawsuit, do not ignore it, because ignoring it is essentially giving up when there are other options. And as Jeff knows, Jeff's done a large amount of short sale transactions, and I think he'd agree with me when I say that recently, in the last year and a half or so, the banks are becoming more and more receptive to doing those kind of short sales. Another key with short sales is you want to make sure that you have an attorney working with you to review the documentation to make sure that within the short sale agreement, the lender is actually waiving their right to pursue you for whatever the amount owed on the mortgage is past what the purchase price of the property was. Because otherwise, in the state of Florida, the lender does have the right to pursue you for the balance. And that's important to know, because there are other states out there where that's not the case. Florida is a judicial state where they can pursue you for the balance of the mortgage once they complete their foreclosure action, and also they can pursue you in a short sale, unless, of course, they've put in writing in their approval letter that they're waiving that right. Another thing that's great about short sales recently is there's more and more programs where there's potential for homeowners to even get some cash. They call it relocation expenses, and that's a great opportunity, because it's obviously an upsetting situation when you do have to leave your home, but having some kind of monetary exchange so that you can get a new place, move out, and all of those things, and move on with that portion of your life and close that door, and know that you don't have to deal with the concern of potentially the bank coming after you in the future. That's one of the great aspects of the new programs that are coming out with the short sale. And I think Jeff can tell us a little bit more about the real estate market and his experience with short sales in the Martin County and St. Lucie County area.
Well, yeah, we've done quite a few, fortunately or unfortunately, over the last 4 years. But what I wanted to do first was just back up a little bit. You mentioned a forbearance, and a lot of people may not even know what a forbearance is. It's really like a catch-up plan, but it doesn't really help modify your payment. If anything, sometimes it could increase your payment. Is that correct?
That's correct. A forbearance is essentially where the bank is forbearing your current monthly payment. So say you had a forbearance for 6 months perhaps, then you may not be required to pay any mortgage payments during that time period, or perhaps they'll allow you to pay a lesser amount of your mortgage. But in most forbearance situations, the amount that you were supposed to pay will be tacked on to the end of your loan, and they will most likely tack on late fees. Interest will continue to accrue. So forbearance is really more designed for someone that is in a situation where it's a temporary hardship. For example, say there was perhaps a medical emergency where there was a large amount of costs for a couple months, and then once that situation is cleared, then they'd be able to make their mortgage. But typically, most of my clients, I do not advise to go forward with forbearance, because it's not really a complete solution. It's essentially putting a Band-Aid over something that needs a tourniquet, and it's not really solving the problem. Again, each person's situation is different, and it dramatically depends on what your income is, what assets you have. Do you have other real estate out there? Everyone's going to be a little bit different about what they qualify for. That goes for the mod programs out there. That also goes for any kind of bankruptcy that you'd attempt to do. It's really a case-by-case basis as far as what's going to work for what person. But that is correct. The forbearance is not at all a permanent solution.
Okay, and something that we're going to touch on in a little bit after the next break is, how how people look at these situations, and it's a very scary thing when you miss mortgage payments. We all have been programmed and brought up to do the responsible thing, and I want to expand on that a little bit about doesn't make you a bad person if you're behind in your mortgage or you're struggling. And it also some other things to expect and some things you may be told that are wrong from the representative from the banks or the collection agencies or whatever. There's a lot of misleading information out there, and hopefully we can clarify some of that starting with this show today. And we're going to go ahead and switch over to the report from the Florida Network News, and we'll be back in just a minute.
This is WPSL Port St Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
And you're listening to the Real Estate Pros Show here on WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Back to your host, Jeff Rubin.
Thank you, Veronica. And if you would like to call into the show, it's 340-1590. That's 340-1590. Okay, let's say that you're behind in your mortgage 60 days. You start to get those nasty grams and nasty phone calls, and you happen to answer the phone, and someone from Big Bank USA, let's say, gets on there and starts telling you how you have to pay, and you say you have no money, you lost your job, whatever your hardship might be, illness, whatever it might be, and they say, oh, we're going to come take your house in 30 days. You better start paying. In the state of Florida, that can't happen. It's a judicial state. That's easy for me to say. There's certain processes that have to take place. That's why it's better to consult some professionals and not hide your head in the sand. A lot of people get depressed and get upset, don't want to face it because it's obviously not something that anyone wants to think about, but it is something that obviously is out there and you have to deal with. And if you come to someone like myself or Chapman Plymel's office where Phil is, we have a lot of experience in dealing with these situations with the lenders, and every situation is different. And unfortunately, there aren't too many situations that I haven't seen, or probably Phil hasn't seen, and from the mortgage side that James hasn't seen. And that's why we're here. We're professionals, and we want to help. We can answer your questions and give you the advice, from experience, and let you know what is false and what isn't, and what's the truth. And the truth is, you have to react and do something about these problems. And there's various ways of doing that. Loan modification or something similar to that is definitely an alternative if you do have a job. If you don't have a job, it's going to be very difficult to do that. Some people might want to talk about principal balance reductions. It's very rare, although it is becoming a little bit more, something that the banks consider. But it never really makes much of a dent. And of course, there's short sales. And short sales, quite frankly, is really the best situation out of a crappy one that you might be in. And that's something that Rescue Florida Realty, my company, has been highly successful in helping people with. A lot of times we can get you away from your debt, even possibly put some money in your pocket for moving expenses from the lender. It's every situation is different. Like I said, every situation is different. It really going to depend on your financial situation and your hardships. But I can tell you that the quicker that you react to it and get ready for what might be happening if you're behind, the better you actually are going to feel about it. Because unfortunately, I've seen way too many people come into a situation too late, and it's very difficult to help someone at the last hour. And especially if you get served, you do need to react to that. And it's not as simple as just writing a letter and sending it in. You want to make sure that you do it correctly to preserve your rights, because, again, Florida is a judicial state. They cannot come just take your house. Okay, so hopefully that does relieve some tension of any of you that are listening in regards to that. Now, of course, once you get through that process, people always are concerned about, will I ever be able to buy a house again? Let's say they get through this and they get back on track financially. Will they be able to buy a house again? And the answer is yes. And James, I know that there's programs out there specifically suited for people that have gone through foreclosure as well as short sales. And that's not something that a lot of people know.
Right, and that's something that our community has been ravaged with, to be honest. I mean, there's thousands of families that have been affected by short sales, foreclosures, bankruptcy. And in the old day, it used to be you had a foreclosure or a bankruptcy, you're 7 to 10 years before you're ever thinking about buying a house again, before you could even dream of reestablishing credit. That's not the case anymore, especially that the new programs that have been put in place to help people recover from this housing disaster that we're in, and quite honestly, we're kind of getting through a little bit here. I mean, housing prices are starting to tick up a little bit. So there is, I get a lot of people telling me, well, I'm waiting for the values to drop some more. I don't know. I don't think, Jeff, you're probably the better one to comment on that. But I'm not seeing prices of homes dropping and plummeting. They're kind of staying stable, maybe ticking up a little bit. But for the people who have gone through a foreclosure or a short sale or bankruptcy, there is hope. And the rule of thumb, if you're a conventional mortgage, you had a bankruptcy or a short sale or a foreclosure, that's probably, conventional means your loan is going to be sold off to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. We're probably not going to take you there because the time frames are a little long. It's 5 years for a foreclosure, 3 years after a bankruptcy, 4 years after a bankruptcy. But FHA, that's the Federal Home Loan Association, run through HUD. 2 years after you are discharged from a bankruptcy, for a bankruptcy, you can apply for a mortgage again as if it never occurred. Now, you still have to credit qualify, meaning most lenders are going to want to see at least 620 to even a 640 score. But the USDA, that's run by Rural Development, their restriction for people who are coming out of a short sale is zero. FHA, they're going to look at the same as if you had a foreclosure. It's going to be a 3-year wait window. From the time that it goes stamped and filed at the county, you have to wait 3 years before you can apply for a mortgage, and then you'd have to apply just again on normal credit, income, and asset qualifying terms. USDA, you could have went into this missing the last 6 mortgage payments, and as long as there are a zero deficiency balance, you can apply for this loan. Now, when I say zero deficiency balance, Phil, you want to give a little bit of light
That's
on
what
that?
I touched on earlier. In Florida, the big problem is it's awful if someone loses a property or a home, but the bigger picture is also focusing on the fact that there's a deficiency balance, meaning the difference between the amount that was owed and then the amount that the bank is able to recoup via either, say, a short sale, or if it does go through the foreclosure process and it's auctioned off, what the bank recoups at auction. Unfortunately, in St. Lucie and Martin County and throughout most of Florida, the auction process typically is not going to net the lender a large amount of money because it's a foreclosure auction. There's a large risk factor for any potential buyers that are out there. And as James was saying, it does affect lending in the future. That's what I focus on with my clients is if we do have to get into a situation where we have to give up the home, I want to really, really push to get that deficiency waiver, or we're going to look at possibly filing a bankruptcy to get them discharged from that debt. Another big advantage to a bankruptcy is that with bankruptcy discharges, there's absolutely no tax liability to what you're discharged from in bankruptcy, whereas there is potential tax liability that you may want to speak to an accountant about when you're dealing with short sales or if you're dealing with a lender forgiving any kind of debt against you. And as James was saying, it does affect you in the future because if they're not waiving the deficiency in writing, then you're going to have problems in obtaining credit in the future. I do know that several clients of mine that have gone through bankruptcy, a big concern is, when am I going to be able to buy a home again? When am I going to be able to get credit cards? Most of my clients that I see typically are getting credit card offers within a few months after completing their bankruptcy. I'm not necessarily advising them to take those credit card offers, but I have seen clients also be able to buy a car and obtain financing. Again, it's going to depend on your income and different requirements for getting those loans, but it's not necessarily the black smear that it was years ago. As odd as it may sound, now may be one of the better times to be considering a bankruptcy or short sale simply because of the mass amount of people that are having to face the situation, particularly in this state. As James was saying, there's new programs coming out March 1st that are trying to address some concerns. So my belief is that as we continue to go through this problem in this state, I think there will be more and more opportunity to address it from hopefully our government as well, and then seeking the advice of an attorney to make sure you're aware of those programs out there is really a key part of the program.
Well, back to that USDA program, even though they do not have a restriction for a person who had a short sale, remember, lenders do have the right to put those overlays on it. And many lenders out there will sit there and say, yeah, well, we know USDA doesn't have a restriction to it, but our restriction is going to be, we're going to view it as if you were in the, the same restrictions if it was an FHA loan coming out of a short sale, which would be that 3-year window. Now, USDA, you mentioned that. A lot of people start thinking, well, I don't buy a farm. Who wants to go live out and grow cows and chickens? That's not the case. In our area, USDA is restricted by zones and income. All right. Well, first let's look at the zones. The zones in our area are anywhere west of 95 in St. Lucie County, and pretty much all of Martin County. That's Palm City, Jensen Beach, Stewart, Hope Sound, Hutchinson Island. The Martin County portion of Hutchinson Island is deemed USDA zone. I don't think there's many farms out there.
So if somebody wanted
Maybe
to,
some jumbo loans, though.
What's that?
Jumbo loans, maybe?
That won't go
Southern end of-
USDA.
but so if somebody wanted to purchase a house in tradition,
Yes.
they would be eligible.
They would be eligible, but here's the catch now. There is also an income restriction for whatever county you're in. Martin St. Lucie County, for a family of 1 to 4 individuals, is $74,000. So that is the adjusted gross income, not the gross income. There's a difference. If you write off a bunch of losses, that reduces the amount of money you make to where the adjusted gross income is. In Palm Beach County, that number goes up a little bit more to $94,000. Now, if it's a family of 5 to 8, you can go up to $90,000 in our community.
Okay, so someone goes through a short sale, and they're paying their rent at their new place, and they're just being responsible with their payments. You're saying that there's still hope that they can get down the road. They have to obviously make sure that their credit is built up to at least some type of resemblance of decent credit.
Every bank these days that is a quality bank or a quality lender will offer USDA. Okay, it's just because a bank offers it doesn't mean that that's what they want to specialize in. There's lenders out there that all they do are USDA loans, and those are the lenders that will accept it. Now, it's got to make sense. It can't be, I just haven't paid my mortgage in 18 months. I lose the house through short sale program, and even though I have no deficiency balance, I want to go buy a brand new one the next day. The lender's not going to want that. What they're going to want to see is that you've actually gone out, go rent for 3-6 months. Show that you have a rental history. Reestablish the credit, because you're going to need a 620 minimum score. And if you haven't paid a mortgage in a while, mortgage history is the heaviest weighted factor in a credit report. So if you have not paid your mortgage in a while, or you missed one payment, that's like a sledgehammer slamming your credit report. What we've done, because there are so many, like we were saying earlier, there's so many different scenarios, so many different variables. We've created what's called the Road to Recovery program. This is actually will start with a licensed financial advisor taking a look and giving you a financial snapshot, seeing where you are. Do you have a dime in the bank, or do you have some money in the bank? If you're coming through a short sale or foreclosure or a bankruptcy, odds are you probably don't have a lot of documented income anywhere. Maybe you got in a safe or a pillow somewhere, but you're not going to have it documented, or you would have been granted the short sale or foreclosure. Then we try to take a credit snapshot, see where you're at. Do you have a 480 credit score, or is your score somewhere in the 600s? Then we start to give you steps to take to rebuild. It may take you 6 months. It may take you 12 months. It may take you 18 months. But we're putting you on the path to be responsible financially again, to go ahead and reestablish credit again, to learn the proper steps to take to own a home. And then we see if once you get to this criteria you would qualify for a loan, we go ahead and we get you one, and we find you a home. And this program it's free. We actually do this as a service to our community. There's no charge to this. If you want some further information on it, call the station here at 772-340-1590, or you can call me in my office. I'll give you the direct line. It's 772-403-5848, and just mention that you're looking for the Road to Recovery program, which is a free service we're offering to our community.
Yeah, and if you have any questions in regards to legal services, Phil, what's your phone number for anyone who's...
You can call our office at 772-283-2626. That was 772-283-2626. And again, it is a free consultation. We do also have an office in Fort Pierce location as well. The primary office is in Stewart, but we are able to meet clients in Fort Pierce because we understand the last thing we want any of our clients to do is to miss a large amount of work just to come see us for the free consultation.
Okay. And again, if there's any questions from the real estate side, short sale side, look at buying, selling, whatever, my office is 772-332-2964. So just give us a call. And what I wanted to discuss before we end the day today is something that I found some statistics that have to do with the U.S. They say that there's a new foreclosure filing every 15 seconds.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
That's more than 6,100 per day. And that's 4.5 million households that are at risk. And that Florida remains one of the top states for foreclosure-related rescue scams. Okay? And it's very important, again, people are desperate sometimes and they're scared, and someone's going to come along and tell you exactly what you want to hear. And that's, hey, just give me some money and I'm going to make everything better. And it doesn't work that simple, okay? And there's state laws out there that are in place to protect you. I would just like to caution anyone, do not pay anyone up front for a loan modification, okay, or any other type of help unless you're going to a reputable attorney. If you're going to a real estate professional such as myself, we cannot charge you up front. It's against the law. And do not be taken. I have seen too many people come into my office and say, well, I went to Joe Blow and he said he was going to do a loan modification for me, and I paid him $2,500, and I haven't heard anything, and I've gotten nowhere. And when we pick up the phone and call the bank on their behalf, sometimes they may have never even heard of Joe Blow or his company, or have even ever received any paperwork. So please make sure that you go to someone who has experience in short sales or is a reputable foreclosure defense attorney and get the right advice. If you have any questions, you can call your lenders directly, but just remember they're not always on your side, and you do have to look out for yourself, okay? Because if it's up to a bank or a servicer, they will bleed every penny out of your account to make sure that you make your payments. And when that's gone, they're not going to turn around and give it back to you because they feel bad for you and you have no money. So make sure you look out for yourself and your family first. Treat this as best as you can as a business decision, even though it's an emotional one when it comes to a house. But you really have to get in that mindset if you're in some sort of trouble. So I implore you that if you have any questions in regards to that, certainly, you can call the show and you can discuss it with us here, or you discuss it off the air. If you didn't get our numbers or you need more information, you certainly can call the station or visit the website at the station and get information. If you'd like to visit our websites, mine is rescuefloridarealty.com, just like it sounds, rescuefloridarealty.com. Phil, what's yours?
Our website is treasurecoastlegal.com. That's all one word, treasurecoastlegal.com. And there's some more information on our website as well regarding our firm and some other practice areas we have as well.
Okay. And James, what's your website?
It's mpfgonline.com. M is in mortgage, P is in plus, F is in financial, G is in group, online.com. But, what I'm trying to gather here and get away, and to really feel that I'm getting, is that I think the community definitely needs to know and understand that it's just scary. This is scary what they're going through, because we see it on a day in and day out basis. And to us, you almost become numb to it. But it's nice in that we're in a position where we can be unemotionally attached to give that advice that sometimes it'll help you to move towards those tough decisions you may have to make if you're severely upside down in a house. And yeah, you may love it, but financially you're never going to recover from it. And then not to be so afraid of taking the steps forward to maybe do a short sale foreclosure, and because there are options afterwards. It's not a life sentence.
Yeah, if you bought a house and you paid $500,000 for it at the height of the market, chances are, if let's say you're in Port St Lucie, that house is probably worth somewhere around $120,000 now.
Right.
That's a huge spread to recover from, and unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So sometimes, you have to look at it, like I said before, a little bit more non-emotional and look at what's really best. Because, it's funny, I have a friend who is an ER physician at a local hospital, and ever since this whole crisis started a few years ago, he has seen a huge, dramatic increase in stress-related illnesses and ailments coming to the ER, and that's just the ER. Just imagine the people out there that haven't sought out help. Stress can do so many things to you, and this is a big stressful thing when you're in those kind of situations. So you just seek good help, whether it's from us or from someone else,
Right.
and do the right thing. There are plenty of places, once you get through this situation, that you'll be able to live someplace and live comfortably and not have to deal with the type of stress that's involved. And that's the big thing. This is not prototypical real estate that my office deals with every day now. This is definitely a foreclosure-related type of thing, and it takes a certain expertise. There are a lot of people out there that say that they do foreclosures or they do short sales, and you really just need to know the ins and outs. There are so many little moving parts of every deal that you need someone who has that experience. So hopefully we'll be able to expand in this in future, next week and the following weeks. And there's lots of other things. It's not all gloom and doom, people. There's actually a lot of positive things that are going on in the real estate world. But we wanted to make sure that people that are out there listening, understand those things. One of the things that we discussed before, just briefly, was what happens when someone does goes through a short sale or goes through a foreclosure, and there's that dreaded deficiency balance, which is, that's a big thing. There's a thing out there that a lot of people aren't aware of, and it's called the Mortgage Forgiveness Debt Relief Act and debt cancellation. It's something that will help primary homeowners, so it has to be your primary. You will not be responsible for paying taxes on the debt that's forgiven. And that's obviously very important, because you can go from one crisis to another. So obviously you do want to seek out tax advice from a professional, but this is something that you can look up yourself, and it's on the IRS website. But if you prefer, if you go to rescuefloridarealty.com, we have a tab for it, and you'll be able to find it right on the left-hand side. And it is reprinted directly from the Internal Revenue Service website, and it goes through the program. And that's something to remember, because people come into our office every day and say, okay, well, if they, forgive my debt for $250,000, I'm going to have to pay taxes on that, because that's what my Aunt Betty said, or that's what my neighbor said, and I'm going to end up having to pay taxes on that money, and I can't afford to do that either. Well, if it's your primary residence and you follow the certain guidelines, and I mean, there's a lot of different little guidelines. If you go online and you'll take a look at it, you really don't have to worry as much. Just make sure, though, that, again, you don't bury your head in the sand after the fact and just assume that they're going to do it, because remember, it is the IRS. Okay, you have to do it the right way and find the right professional, and make sure they know that you went through this and that they are aware of the Mortgage Debt Relief Act. So maybe you go to your accountant, or maybe if you don't have one, when you interview an accountant or a CPA, you ask them if they're aware of this. Come prepared, do your homework, and if they're not knowledgeable with it, or you don't feel comfortable with them, find someone that is knowledgeable with it.
So you mean your own lender's not going to help you with that?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry.
No,
you can't call Bank of America and ask for friendly advice, because
they're taking your
unfortunately,
house.
they don't care.
Right.
Okay, and I don't mean to offend people who might be customers or employees of Bank of America or any other large bank like Chase out there, but we will get into some really strange and scary horror stories that I know I've experienced over the last 4 years dealing with these lenders. Unfortunately, they can shoot themselves in the foot, you would think that they want to divest themselves of bad loans and non-performing assets. And sometimes you scratch your head and think, gee, maybe there's someone at J.P. Morgan Chase who really wants that $30,000 condo in Stewart for some reason. I don't know why, because they just turned down a $30,000 offer when the thing is probably only worth $25,000. So anyway, we'll get into more of this in future shows, and I thank you for tuning in. And I'm Jeff Rubin with Rescue Florida Realty, and Phil Resnick from Chapman and Plymouth, and James Kanata from Mortgage Plus Financial. And we appreciate you tuning into our first show, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And we look forward to your participation in future episodes. Thank you.
And of course, we'll keep the numbers on hand if we get calls for your individual offices, so they can reach you right here at 340-1590.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This is WPSL Port St Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.